Thank you for joining us again today. Today we're going to talk about emailing documents out of Sage 100. Let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the documents that we can send out of Sage 100. Then we'll go through email account setup, some paperless office setup, including how to set up the forms, how to create the email message, and how to set up the customers for emailing the documents. And then we'll do a demonstration of emailing sales orders. And then we'll show you how to look at the PDF documents in the customer viewer, both in Paperless Office and in customer maintenance and inquiry. And then lastly, we'll take a look at electronic delivery inquiry and default delivery options. So the first thing we want to talk about is the kind of documents that you can send out of Sage 100. So for customer documents, think about those customer interfacing documents like sales orders, invoices, and the one a lot of people forget about are statements. So if you can email these documents, obviously you don't have to spend money on paper, stamps, envelopes, labor, all of those kinds of things. And that can add up to a significant savings if you're sending statements, for example. But you can also send documents to vendors. And the most common documents, of course, are purchase orders. But again, another document a lot of people don't think about or don't know that exists in Sage 100 is you can pay your vendors via electronic payment with ACH, and you can send the vendor a electronic remittance advice notifying the vendor of which invoices that you have paid. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go through is how to set up your email account in Sage 100. So here we are in Sage 100, and I'm going to go to Library Master and then Company Maintenance, and we'll call up our test company here. And we're going to go to the Email tab, and this is where you define the email account that is going to be used for sending emails out of Sage 100. Now, this is not the account the customer will necessarily see, that's up to you, but this is the account that is actually used for sending the emails. So quickly, you can see I've defined the authentication method as basic. I'm using Gmail in this example with TLS encryption, and I've set up my user ID and password, and that's all I need to do. Now we can test this to make sure that it works. So we'll go to test email, and we'll just put in a from email address. And we'll put in the test email address that we're going to send to. And then we'll just say send. And what we're hoping for here is that we don't get a pop-up window with an error message, which of course we didn't. So that indicates that our email setup is valid and successful. So let's go ahead and end out of that. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is the Paperless Office setup. And we're going to go through form setup, crafting the email message, and then the customer setup. So back in Sage 100, we're going to go to Paperless Office, and we're going to go to Setup, and we're going to look at a couple of things here. First of all, under Paperless Office options, you have to make sure that you have checked the box to go ahead and send forms and to save them as PDFs, which then allows us to go into form maintenance and define some parameters here for the form. So I'm just going to do a lookup and select the one that's in here and show you that I have the Paperless Office set up to save PDF copies of all of the sales order forms, all of the documents, and I've defined the from email address as I send the forms via Sage 100. So remember, this is not necessarily the same email address that is used for the account that is actually going to send the email. This is the email address the customer will see. So you probably want to make sure this is a valid email address in case the customer responds to your email. I've also defined the location the PDF document will be saved. This is a standard paperless office setting, and I've said that I want to only keep the last copy. And then I've also defined an override password. And the override password is used because you can send the documents with a password embedded for the customer using a customer's password. Well, you won't know what that is over time, and different customers can have different passwords. So you have to define an override password. This is a required field that allows you to open the PDF document if it's password protected. Now, if you don't send it password protected, then this doesn't matter. So we'll go ahead and just accept that. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is the message. So what happens here is when it sends the email, it's going to use this message as the email message, and it's going to attach the PDF of the document to the email. So I'm going to deal with customer forms, and we're going to do all companies, and we're going to do the sales order, and we'll take a look at the order document. So the subject of the email is attached is the document for bill to name, dated document date. And these are variables that can be inserted in the message. And you do that with this list over here. So you can insert any of these things. I'll show you how to do this. We'll just take document number off of here for a second. And I'll show you how this is done. All we do is come over here and we say we want document number. We hit the copy button and we come over here and we hit paste, and that inserts it. So the subject is attached is the sales order for customer name, dated sales order date. The message is thank you for your order. Please see attached for sales order and then the sales order number. So that's how this works. Lastly, we're going to look at how we set up the customer for sending the emails. So we're going to go to accounts receivable, customer maintenance, and I'm just going to call up my test company here. And up in the right-hand corner in Sage 100 version 2021 is paperless office delivery options. So here, because it's a customer, you can choose what documents. Now, I haven't defined to do statements, so that's why it doesn't show up on the list. But in our example today, we're just going to deal with sales orders. So I'm going to say I want to email sales orders. So I've selected the email checkbox here. Now notice I've deselected print, which means when I do my processing here, it's not going to print a copy of the sales order to paper. But understand that you can do both. You can print a copy to paper and you can email it. There will be a copy of the document sent to Paperless Office. You will have a PDF copy in Paperless Office that you can print later if you wish to print it, or you can just look at it from within Sage 100 that we'll talk about a little later. But you can choose to also print it at the time so that you get a paper copy as well. This is also, as I talked about earlier, is where you can define a password that's embedded in the document, which is required to open the document. So if this is sensitive information, then you may want to do that. So I said email, so let's go ahead and go to the email tab. And this is where you define which email address or addresses the sales order is going to be sent to at the time you do the processing. So the first option here is use email address and data entry, and I have that checked. This option allows the document to be sent to the email address that's entered on the specific sales order. So if you have different people within an organization that you wish to send the sales order to as an acknowledgement, then you're going to want to check this box, because then it allows you order by order to define the email address that the order is going to be sent to. You also have an option to send the document to the customer's email address. And this is the email address that's defined right here for the customer. So you can check that box as well. Instead of that, you can also do any of the contacts that you've defined and send the emails to them as well, if you choose to do so. Lastly, you can just type in an email address and send that as well. So if there's somebody else that you want to send the email to, you can do that. Now you also have an option as you select these for contact and additional email addresses, you can define them as the carbon copy or the blind carbon copy. So you can actually send a copy of the order to someone without the other users knowing that you sent it, or the other recipients knowing. So it's any combination of these. Whatever you select here, get emailed to all of them, whatever you've defined here. And the process just makes multiple passes and will email to each one of these. In our example here, we're just going to email to the document email address, the one that's entered on the sales order. So let's go ahead and accept that, and we'll close the window. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the actual printing / emailing of sales orders. So in Sage 100, we've now completed all of the setup. We've gone into Paperless Office, completed our setup. We've gone into customer maintenance, completed our setup, and we've gone into company maintenance and completed our setup. And so we're ready to go here. So let's go ahead and enter a sales order. So we'll do a one-off here. So I'm just going to go to sales order entry and create a sales order. And I'm going to type in the email I want this sales order to be sent to. Because remember, that's how we defined it for this particular customer. It's going to use the email address that's on the order. And so quickly, I'll just select an item and a quantity here so that we can complete the order. So now before I accept, we'll go finish the tabs here. I'm going to go ahead and go to print order and save my changes. So when you print the sales order and you've configured it with Paperless Office, you have this new option called Paperless Office Output. And it's just going to ask you, how do you want to handle this particular document? And if it's set to print all, it's going to act like it would be if you never set up Paperless Office. It's just going to print the sales order. But you can choose these electronic delivery options as well. So my two favorites here are to print /PDF all and electronically deliver, or print /PDF or electronically deliver. And I'm going to choose that one. If I choose that particular option, it's going to look at the customer and see if the document is supposed to be printed or if it's supposed to be emailed. If it's been defined to not print and only email, that's what it's going to do. If it's been defined to print but not email, then it's going to print a hard copy to paper. If it's defined to do both, as we discussed earlier, it will do both. It will email a copy to the customer and it will print a copy. Now notice it says print /PDF, which means that it will print a PDF copy. So let's go ahead and say print here. And notice it's connecting to the email server and it's sending the email. And then I get a confirmation of attempted emails and successful emails. So this has successfully sent that document to the customer. Let's go ahead and close this out. Now, just so you can see this, I did open up my Google Mail here. And you can see the email messages in my sent folder. So there's my sales order acknowledgement for that. So you can see that. And it also, if I open up the email, you can see that I, in fact, did receive this email as well. But I won't show you that. Now that we've printed and emailed the sales order, let's go ahead and look at the customer viewer. So in Sage 100, if we go to Paperless Office, in the main folder, you will find the customer viewer. And the customer viewer will allow you to find and drill down to any of the documents that you save that are customer related. So again, sales order, invoice, statement. So I'm going to choose order here, RMA as well. And you can see that I have that document that I sent sitting here, and I can just double click at it and drill into the PDF copy. But the other thing I want to show you here is that you can email from within the viewer. So you can also highlight multiple documents, and you can push the email button here, and it'll open up a window, and it'll give you an option to put in a from email address and those kinds of things, and you can email directly from within the viewer. So now this is the Paperless Office viewer from within Paperless Office, but the other way to access that is you can go to customer maintenance or inquiry, and you can call up the customer, and you go to the sales orders tab, and you have a Paperless Office viewer. You can also go to the invoices tab. But what this will do is show you the documents that are already defined specifically for that customer. So in the Paperless Office viewer, within the module Paperless Office, you'll see all of the documents for all of the customers. And in there, you can filter for a specific customer. But if you come here, it's already filtered for that particular customer. It makes it a lot easier to find the documents. So I want to give you an example of this. So I'm going to go back to sales order, and I'm going to talk about batch printing of sales orders. So I'm going to go to sales order printing, and as you know, if you do the batch printing of sales orders, by default, it's only going to print those sales orders that have not previously been printed. And I'll go ahead and choose my print/PDF or electronically deliver here. Now, this is the standard form code. If you have a regular form code, it will remember your option that you've selected here, so you don't have to select it every time. Well, let's go ahead and say print. And what this is going to do is print, if I remember correctly, 3 sales orders and email those 3 sales orders to me for 3 different customers. So there they are. So now if I go back to the Paperless Office customer viewer and choose order, you can see that I have sales orders for ABF, ABS, and 01 AdNet as well. So this viewer will show you all of the sales orders for each of the customers or all of the customers based on some date filtering that's here as well. And you can change the dates. And notice this is the order date range. Make sure that it's not the date that it was printed, it's the order date. So now that we've talked about the customer viewer, let's take a look at our last couple of topics here. Let's go to the electronic delivery inquiry. Now, the electronic delivery inquiry is new for Sage 100 2021. So in Paperless Office, in the main menu, I'm going to go to the customer electronic delivery inquiry. Notice that there's also a vendor electronic delivery inquiry, but we'll go to the customer one. And this is going to ask the company, let me choose some options here for documents, delivery type email, successful or failed, or both, whatever we want here with a bunch of filtering. And this is going to show me all of the emails and whether they were successful or failed. Now, what's nice about this is now within Sage 100, you can identify email documents that were not successful in being sent. In prior versions of Sage 100, you'd have to go to that account and look at the sent folder to see what was sent and whether they were successfully sent or not. Here, you can now look within Sage 100. So if I wanted to, I could just filter this for failed documents and identify those, and I can see who they are. That summary that pops up after they've been sent is nice, but it doesn't show me who they were sent to. Obviously, you know, you could be sending statements to thousands of customers. So you want to use this particular application with some pretty specific filtering. Well, now that we've talked electronic delivery inquiry, our last topic is, again, something that's new that was added to Sage 100 version 2021, which is default delivery options. In Sage 100, under Paperless Office Setup, we can go to Default Delivery Options. And we can choose our company code. And we can choose our document type and our forms. For customers, we have sales order, invoices, sales orders. And what this allows us to do is define how we want to set up the customers for the delivery of these documents. So for example, what I can say here for the sales order is when I set up a new customer, then I want to check the box for email and I want to check the box for use email address and data entry, but I don't want to use the company or customer's email address. But for sales orders, I do. So I could check these boxes, and what this allows the system to do is automatically set up the Paperless Office emailing functionality for the customers as they are created. I then don't have to remember to go into customer maintenance for that new customer and go to Paperless Office options and define that. These will automatically be defined, which is a pretty cool feature if you're constantly adding customers. Saves you a lot of time. But notice the other options don't exist here. So if you want to hard code emails or if you want to use contact emails, that's not an option here. Now, something I want to mention that I didn't put on the agenda, just so you know, is you can also set up salespeople for Paperless Office, and you can, as the documents are being sent to the customer, they can automatically be sent to the salesperson that's on that document. So you don't have to define that in the customer settings. So if you want your salespeople to get a copy of those documents as they're being sent out to the customers, you can do that as well. Let's do a recap of what we talked about today. So back on our agenda, we talked about the documents that can be sent via Paperless Office. For accounts receivable, we have the customer documents, sales orders, invoices, statements, RMAs. We went through the email account setup and company maintenance. We went through the 3 different pieces of the setup in Paperless Office: forms, email messages, and customers. We did a demonstration of how to print/email the sales orders. And then I showed you the customer viewer, both in Paperless Office that shows all of the customers, and then the customer viewer in customer maintenance or inquiry that just shows the documents for that specific customer. And then we took a look at electronic delivery inquiry and default delivery options. Thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Please notice our user group on LinkedIn. Our website is www.nimsassociates.com. You can always contact us at erp@nimsassociates.com or call the phone number. But again, thank you very much for your time.